Sri Lanka's most powerful news brand.
Newsfirst, NewsLine with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And a very good morning to you. This is NewsLine, live as always from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And of course we broadcast on TV1 and on all this on social media and also live on www.tv1.lk. And press the button for the live transmission, or you can watch it by pressing the NewsLine button. And this morning it is an absolute jolly good morning. It's the 2nd of January, our second program for the year, and we've got with us that very senior and inimitable legal personality, Mr. Govind Dasri. Very good morning to you and a very happy new year to you.
Good morning, Faraz. And you look a jolly good fellow with your braces tightly round your neck.
Well, thank you kindly, Mr. Dasri.
Last time I thought it'll slip down. It won't this time.
Oh, it won't slip. Nothing's going to slip here. Now, do you know, as we reflect on the year that's gone by and what the future holds, we should really acknowledge the vast amount of public interest in various matters connected to corruption and lack of good governance and poor performance in terms of political delivery. And many people came forward. They whistle blew pretty loud and clear, and they did so without any fear. Well, they may have been fearful, but with the might in terms of a collective action, that those fears may have been been reduced, and therefore the country as a whole has benefited by this information that's emanated from the whistleblowing. We've had various people, like experts, if you like, and people in the know, professionals as well, including people such as Mr. Govind Dasri, who have come forward and given us openly their views on what should be done and what is not being done as well. So I'd like to acknowledge all that. And of course, it takes a bit of doing to put out a program like this. There's a lot of people in the background. We have the person who does our refreshments. We have the engineering team. We have our main control room, and the people who do the graphics, for example, and the all-important cameraman. We have Veeray and so on. So it takes quite a bit of doing. We have the control room right here downstairs. And we'd like to acknowledge all these people who are not out there in the open, but they're very much there, part and parcel of making this all happen. So thank you, everyone. And Mr. Govind Dasri, after that little thing, I'd like to ask you, are you not fearful for your that people will want to get back at you? After all, you're a practicing legal man. Do you think that when you come on programs and talk the truth, but that is not perhaps palatable to the powers that be, do you feel that sometimes it may impinge on your professional practice?
No, never, never. For us, because if you do speak your mind and speak about it objectively, not take particular sides of it, you have nothing to fear. That whole problem with our society is people are fearing to engage themselves, speak openly, and that is why we are really backward. And though we live in time of doom and gloom, I'm a prophet of not of doom. I look forward to, I'm permanently around the Cape of Good Hope, taking the bend. I don't know when. But I hope that 2018 is going to be a year that Sri Lanka is going to make it. And I must say one thing, well, it is the bond scam that is going to open windows. And in respect to the bond scam, I blamed you once. I blamed Maharaj organization for having a fixation on the bond scam. But I think you are right. I was wrong. Because if you did not go on hammer and tongs all the while, you and your chief, the Maharaj organization, this would have been another forgotten chapter. I'm wrong. I admit when I'm wrong. And I would say that for us, that is why I accepted the first show with you for this year. That is because I have great respect for having hammered on this bond scam scheme. We'll see results on the 3rd of December, 3rd of January, not long away. I won't speculate till then, but let's hope we get the answer that we all are waiting for. A welcome change will come over Sri Lanka, and that is what I live and hope for.
Well, thank you. Mr. Dasri, there is some speculation driven by mainly media on the web that President Sirisena will perhaps be appointing a 3-member sort of advisory committee on his behalf to look at the 1,400-page report that has been delivered to him by the bond commissioners. And is that a sort of possibility, do you think?
Yes, it could be a
possibility. Why would he need, I mean, after all, these 2 judges are Supreme Court judges. Why would he need another panel to look at it?
No, I wouldn't say they should look into it. They have no right to look into it. But they can advise him as to how it should be carried forward.
What, in terms of political expediency or in terms of the law?
Instead, to give effect to what he's been saying in recent times, very recent times. I think he knew the schedule of the report. He knew the report was going to be released on the 31st. But before the 31st, he made a very important statement saying that no crooks are going to be spared. Whether they are big or small, he's going after them. And I think he's on the last leg of political journey, and he can make a comeback only to the report. And if he hands this over to the Attorney General, we saw how the Attorney General looked so weak against the Prime Minister and how Mr. Libera was blamed by the commissioners. I mean, I wouldn't have surfaced after that kind of attack, and how feeble he was with Malik Samarawira and the other minister, Kabir Hashim, what's his name?
Mr. Kabir, you know, having listened to the reporting from the Commission of Inquiry and the astounding information that was unearthed, far more detailed than the COPE inquiries unearthed. Having unearthed that, I was sitting there yesterday thinking that there is something terribly wrong here, and that is this. If you recall, Mr. Dasri, we had Malik Samaravikrama, Kabir Hashim, and the Prime Minister in Parliament as well, who said that the requirement was identified as being 18 billion, and they had 3 billion, and so the net requirement was 15 billion. Now, we shall presume that Mr. Hashim, who was the minister at the time, had done this properly, and he didn't sort of fish out the figure, pluck it from the air, and that he had the appropriate agency requesting those funds. Now then, you contrast that with what they said under oath, and you contrast that, Mr. Dasri, with what was said by the Assistant Treasury Secretary, who under oath again said that there was no requirement for any of these funds. Then we have Arjuna Mahendran as the governor of the central bank, who says that this was the requirement, and that's why 1 billion became 10 billion, but he wanted to take 20 billion. And you then contrast that with this undated, unreferenced letter issued by Ravi Karunanayake, and which was preserved in an air-conditioned environment by Mr. Mahendran, causing the commissioners to comment, the Attorney General's department to question how crisp this note was, although purportedly it had been issued around 2 years before that. Now, my question is, there seems to be something wrong here. We have the ministers who are saying that there was a requirement, and then we have the Treasury saying that there was no requirement because they had the money. Now, the point is this: it is not the ministers who orders the central bank to raise funds. It is the Treasury who tells the central bank how much money there is. The central bank does not know how much money is required until they're told by the Treasury. So how come this bond went ahead for 10 million, on 10 billion and 15 and so on, when the Treasury says that there was no requirement. But the ministers say there was.
Now that's interesting the way you put it, but I think the answers should be there in the report. These are matters that were heard by the commissioners.
Yes, I'm curious.
I'm quite surprised that they wouldn't wait without commenting on these for us, and I think we'll have the answers very soon if the report is released.
Are you trying to politely say to me that I must be patient?
You must be patient for just 24 hours. Wait till the report.
But then again, there's other speculation as well, that will the President not release this report before the local polls designed for the 10th of February?
But it's interesting that...
Shouldn't one be divested from the other?
Let's look at the two reports. There's this report and the Udulagama report that was released during the time of the Rajapaksas. Now here, the President has made a very clear pronouncement that he is going to not spare anybody, high or mighty he may be, if there's any act of corruption. Now that's a very revealing statement. Furthermore, the report is released on the 31st. He is going to meet the press on the 3rd. Now the press can press him to make a lot of...
Don't you think the President, would you advise the President in an exercise of transparency and accountability, would you advise the President to bring with him about 500 copies of this report and distribute it then and there to the waiting press?
Well, he could do that, but there is an obligation on his part to first submit it to Parliament. And the parliamentarians then could look at it and comment on it. There can be a debate on it. Many things can take place. So I don't know what...
Is this the sort of thing I can get from the RTI, using the RTI?
Well, you could do it, but it will be such a slow process. I mean, RTI is designed to delay. I don't think anything has emerged with the RTI being in existence for so long. I don't expect Sri Lankans have the know-how or the mechanism to get fast reports from the RTI. I don't have, so far, in the first 24 to 60 months, RTI has not obtained any useful information, source material. So I expect the President to pay up, because you see, President is politically very, very weak. He can come on top, provided he does the needful. I mean, he's going on a coalition now with the local government elections. If the local government elections give a tremendous boost to the Rajapaksa family and to the joint opposition, President is in trouble. So the President, I think, has to make a comeback, and his comeback could be through this report. He could make more revealing statements, and if these revealing statements are detrimental to the Prime Minister, you can expect the Prime Minister...
Talking of the Prime Minister here, I am also disturbed because he is, on this matter, because he is the Minister in charge of the subject of the Central Bank. Because the finance minister has been split into three. Now the thing is this, Mr. Dasri, let's presume that he didn't know anything what was going on. But by his own admission, he had said that he had instructed Mr. Mahendran to ensure that there was no conflict of interest and that his son-in-law should divest himself from the Perpetual Treasuries Limited, who was a primary dealer. Now, the Prime Minister, by his own admission also, didn't actually go back and check whether that had been done. Then we have the media and public interest activists and so on all making a big song and dance that there was something terribly amiss. At least by the time the first COPE started looking into this thing, why on earth didn't the Prime Minister, at least at that late stage, check to see whether his instructions to Mr. Mahendran had been carried out and the level to which it had been carried out? At that point, he would have found out and stopped this entire thing in its track, and he would have pointed out, after all, Prime Minister is a legal man with a legal qualification, and he could have said to Mr. Mahendran, listen, chum, I asked you to do this, you haven't done it, and look what a mess you've caused, Stanley.
I think Prime Minister has got into a real fix. He has completely destroyed his Mr. Clean image, and Prime Minister is in serious trouble. And I would be surprised if the President takes over the job of running the UNP, because the UNP has no leadership. President may well take over, and he might emerge in this whole situation And thereafter, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, to his credit, remember he gave up his run for presidency not once but twice. He might retire.
Oh, don't make it sound so charitable to him. He didn't give it up. He had to. He had to either leave being the leader of the United National Party. He gave it up, Mr. Dase, come on, because he knew he didn't have a chance from anywhere of winning this the election on his own.
No, I would say you may be correct to a point, but I won't accept what you say, because he could have very, very stubbornly kept going, and he would have been thrown out, no doubt. But he could be thrown out this time. He's in a worse position than ever before, because so many ministers, so many MPs will lose their the prospect of coming back to Parliament because of one man, Ranil Wickremesinghe. They will urge him to go, and
they've been urging him for the. Come on, you know the figures: 40, 23, 22, and 4. 40 years in Parliament. 23 years as the leader of the party, 22 the minimum number of elections that he has lost as the leader of the United National Party, and 4 is the astonishing record that he is 4 times, the 4th time round Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, a record not equalled by anybody.
True, but also remember he had a clean image. He had an image of being clean, but that's shattered. Now he has no leg to stand on, and this way, if the report is damning, if the president puts all that on record, his running mate will be not being able to
Can the president gain political mileage by releasing the Bond report, even at the expense of the coalition, the marriage between the SLFP and the UNP?
I think if he takes that step, he can not only vanquish Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, Mr. Rajapaksa's existence is totally dependent on Ranil Wickremesinghe's presence in the UNP. If Ranil Wickremesinghe is eliminated, the next to be eliminated will be Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa, and I expect if those two leaders go out of the way, Sri Lanka will be able to emerge with a new set of young leadership. These two old blokes who have been around 40 years in politics, 40 to 45 years in politics, had 2 generations after them who have been totally nullified. They have had no place except unless you're a relation, friend or kinsman of the politician in office. The second generation...
Or member of the Flowered Club.
Yes, look at the provincial councils. Who are the members? Either you've got to be a stooge, or you've got to be a sycophant, or you've got to be a friend or a relation. So this is the game that Rajapaksas and Wickremesinghes have been playing, and we have been totally, that's why I said, I expect the new generation to wake up. They have to take up, if they hear the wake-up call, they must wake up and come. They must answer the alarm. We are old. We have played our role, but I think young people must emerge, and I have confidence. But
sometimes you get young people emerging, like Dr. Jala Jawad's son. But it saddens me when these young politicians who are, the sort of next generation, when they're seen, perhaps because of the cameras, and they want some sort of publicity, but they're seen accompanying, for example, Dr. Jawad was seen accompanying Ravi Karunayaka to the Presidential Commission of Inquiry, and he stood there in a sort of a show of support. Well, yes, fine, but does it? If I was his PR man, I'd tell him to stay well away from there.
That's the trouble. Today, to emerge, you have to hang around a politician, and that is why I blame the young next generation. They must emerge on their own. They have talent, they have ability, they have credibility. Take it and come forward. Don't come on the back of a politician who is already deflated. So I'm requesting the young generation to awake. There are two generations that after Rajapaksas and Wickremesinghe go away. If Wickremesinghe goes away, Rajapaksa has to go. If Rajapaksa goes, Wickremesinghe has to go. I think both will go, but I think the first move will be made by the UNP for their own survival at the local government elections. President Sirisena will help him, not that his record is particularly good, but actually we got to depend on somebody to take a lead to clean this.
And thank God for President Sirisena, because at least...
I think you got to tag media, because if media was not exposing all these things, I mean, not only Maharaj has done a good job, I think also all the media outlets have done their respective jobs, and they have been able to do, because there is more freedom of expression, and this is why I blame the people, the so-called media personalities, the so-called journalists, the so-called people who come and the experts. They have been very, very lackadaisical during the Rajapaksa regime. I don't blame them. I will never blame Rajapaksas, because Rajapaksas, when you stood up to them, they were never difficult. I have always stood up to the Rajapaksas, and Rajapaksas, I must say, were never difficult. They accept your word, because they never mess around with a person who's not going to expose any kind of...
A viewer from Nigambo says that in reference to my figures of 40, 23, 22 and 4, says that in that case President Sirisena too has been in politics for over 40 years. Well, yes, indeed, but he hasn't been a failed leader, has he? He doesn't have 22 electoral defeats under him.
But he might have, I mean, he might get wiped out next time if he doesn't emerge at this stage, because I think...
But he's been courageous enough to come forward and took the bull by the horns and sent the bull back to Medamulina, wherever it is. And he did that, Mr. Darcy. We mustn't water down the fear psychosis that was prevalent then.
The fear psychosis was self-created, because if you stood up to them, they would have taken it the line low. I stood up to them. I had no problems with them. In fact, I can well remember when I wrote an article called Mr. President. Come on, let me finish. Yes, okay. Mr. President. I remember his psychophones going and saying, this is the guy you talk to, he's making this kind of reference to you. What did Mahinda Rajapaksa say? He said, I like those words. You know, one word from you is, from my critics, not from me, from my critics is valuable than 100 words from psychophones. He understood the press. But the thing is, he didn't have the support. He was entrapped in a crowd of bureaucrats who contained him. This government has opened. That is something I will give Sirisena credit. But Sirisena is in dire difficulty even in his own district in the next elections. He is fighting a battle, and this only way he can emerge is if he takes the proper part of what he said 3 days ago to the media and to the public, expose the roots, and then he will be able to regain something. But again, I don't expect him to last long. I would like the whole of the present parliament, all those over 70s and nearing 70s. And also, remember, we must clean up the Central Bank. Central Bank governor makes a stupid statement. He said the last forensic report no more is necessary because it was done in 2013. 2013 is a long way off. Now we are in 2018 with this bond scrap. What is he talking? I think he is also playing politics. The Attorney General is playing politics, and the Treasury. Look at the electricity bills. I know very well the Treasury, some of the officials who were there and who are now elsewhere. They must be taken to task. I think it's the bureaucracy that has to be cleaned, secondly, after we clean the political arena. Yes. This can't go on because it's only the media that is emerging. Media is exposing. If the media was not there exposing all this, we would have been a dead lot. But I have hope. I live, as I said, in the Cape of Good Hope, taking the bend. And I hope that we have a next generation of young people emerging. There are young people even in the political parties, but those who are critical of the leadership is shoved away.
Well, that was, shall we say, a mouthful. But the thing is, Mr. Dasri, when are we going to see results? Now the President's going to make a statement tomorrow. Jolly good, you know, we welcome all that. And
he must also open himself up to cross-examination and questioning by the media and answer them honestly.
But wouldn't it be a PR dream to have the President bring with him 500 copies? And that way he will ensure that all the most senior personnel at various media organizations will be there and present to receive this copy. After all, it's a public document, for heaven's sake.
He can do it very well tomorrow, and he should give tomorrow a copy before that to the Speaker.
No, he can put it on the web. Why not put it on the web?
Well, I don't know whether you
A
can...
link to Facebook,
No, but...
from Facebook to that
Yeah,
report will be the best-selling site ever.
But you know, these reports are never released. The last report I remember, Mahinda Rajapaksa never released.
What about the Batalanda Commission report? What happened to that?
I can't remember. I can't remember what happened. I think it wasn't that released? I can't remember that.
But there was no sort of, there was no kind of...
But I remember very well the Special Presidential Commission report when it was released. He spoke to me. I told him send it to the Attorney General. He did send it to the Attorney General. He did send it, but the thing is, he said, I gave it to Lalit Veeratunga to read it. I don't know what his advice was, but I told him, can you send me a set of copies? He did send. And I waited 2 months, quite some time, and I saw it not being released to the public. So I did something without his permission. I released extracts from that report, which were in my hand. I knew that they lose the report. I knew the Rajapaksa regime, and I knew Lalit Veeratunga, who loses most things most times. I kept the report and I handed it over to the army after the inquiry, special presidential inquiry was over. I handed it over to the army because they were the true custodians. They were my clients, and I knew Gotabaya.
Have you got a copy of that?
No, I don't. I had copy, and only person who asked me for a copy was Diana Captain. She said, Ranga Jayasuriya wants a copy. I said, no copies. First I said, I don't have a copy. I had a copy, but I later told I have a copy.
You mean you were being economical with the truth?
Yes, I had to do that because I didn't want to expose any public servant or any pressman to start fiddling with me, trying to elicit the contents of the report. Because
Why? Was that public document?
No, it was not. It was personally handed to me by the President. I personally handed it over to the proper custodian. The
President is sure you're doing it in the great interest of the national
President gave it to me because I was counsel for the services, and I had appeared on instructions that I followed.
Right. Okay, now, as we come to the end of today's program, shall we go back to this? Will it be the judicial processes, the judiciary, that will shape the political landscape in the immediate future?
I think that the last year, 2017, one thing I can give credit is to the judiciary. They have played their role to near perfection. I won't say to absolute perfection, to near perfection. And they should take leadership now because they have the right to check on the executive and the legislature in terms of Montesquieu doctrine, and they can then check on them. And I think the judiciary has a very important role, and it was played brilliantly so far in proceedings by all three commissioners, including Mr. Chitrasiri, Mr. Prasanna Jayawardena, and the third gentleman. They played it to perfection. Yes, I expect the judiciary to now take over because the Attorney General's department is a weakling. It's a shadow of the Prime Minister. Now, I think this matter...
You could hardly call Dapoli de Rivera shadow of the Prime Minister.
I would call it because why didn't they cross-examine the Prime Minister? Why did they give advanced questions? Is that the way Attorney General conducts himself?
But that is not... was that a decision of the Attorney General? It couldn't have been a decision of Mr. Kodagoda or Mr. De Rivera.
Certainly not Mr. Kodagoda. I don't know Mr. De Rivera. He has been warned by the eminent judge, Mr. Prasanna Jayawardena, for his way he conducted himself.
Well, I think it's possible for people who regularly observed him that Mr. De Rivera sometimes got carried away, but that was in the heat of the moment and a sort of a legal flourish.
But he did not cross-examine Mr. Malik Samaravikrama or Mr. Kabir Hashim. I think I fault him for that. But sadly, they are both people who played ball with the government, and I would say this is why I would recommend that
I think you'll find that a lot of people will disagree with you if you say that Mr. De Rivera and Mr. Kodagoda played ball with the government.
I would say not Mr. Kodagoda. Mr. De Rivera, yes, I would say that. I would say that over and over again. I've said it so, because from the time he was very important, because there was so much of variance between Mr. Vikramasinghe's statement and Mr. Malik Samaravikrama's statement and Kabir Hashim's statement.
That's right.
He should have questioned. Why didn't he ask him? Because if you don't question, the presumption is that you have no questions to ask, and every word they say is accepted as correct by the prosecution. That is the presumption in law. He knows that. He didn't do that.
But the Prime Minister, I must ask you this question before, because it was asked yesterday. Can a member of the public institute legal action against the central bank and or some other authority to force them into action, because as a member of the public told me yesterday, his check is ready, his contribution is ready to fund any legal process that will be undertaken by the public.
They could do that, but it will also require judicial activism, which is now surfacing. Because now people are critical, they are critical of the judiciary. I have been critical of the judiciary. I am prepared to invite contempt. But it has to be done for the betterment of the judiciary. Today judiciary is much better. The Chief Justice, I have called him a person who a very weak man, but today he has come out strongly. We have the best judiciary. I would say the Supreme Court was never as good as this.
Govind Dasri, I'm going to give you an on-air hug, as I'm doing now, because of your forthrightness and your forthright outburst, and we wish you very well for 2018. And on that note, I'd like to reassure everyone who needs reassuring. I don't know who does, but in case anyone does, our media will continue to expose corruption and to take our country to its rightful glory. Believe you me, that we are committed to, and it will happen. There has been no abating of that vision that is carried out by our chairman and his team, and News First, the best news team going, will continue on its journey of discovering corruption, poor performance, under-delivery, and complete, I can't use the word, rubbish that some of our politicians engage in at the expense of the people. Govind Dasri, you know, it's absolutely wonderful having you on our program.
Thank you, Faraz, but that hug might completely destroy me.
There you go. Govind Dasri, thank you very much. And thank you. And that's it. That's the way it was on Newsline on the 2nd of January 2018. Take care. God bless.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.